Well, good afternoon, just barely afternoon. I want to welcome you to the April 27th PRSA chapter meeting. My name is Christy Bonsmer. I think I know most of you here today. I'm the president of PRSA Kansas. April is APR month, so we are happy to welcome Chris O'Neill, APR and Chief of Media Relations for the National Transportation Safety Board. Before we get started, I do have just a couple of quick announcements, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia. I don't know if you guys saw the email. I think it just came last week, but I just wanted to remind you about a virtual town hall for the Southwest PRSA District. Michelle Olson, the 2021 PRSA Chair, and PRSA CEO Linda Thomas Brooks will discuss a variety of PRSA initiatives and plans for 2021. They're going to talk about how PRSA is working to serve us better and updates on member benefits and programs. And that town hall meeting is May 4th at 5:30 p.m. I think it would probably last about an hour. And Heidi Harrell, who is on the National Board of Directors, I think a lot of us know Heidi, she will also be joining the discussion as well. So if you have some time next Tuesday evening, you might hop on that call and see what's going on with PRSA National. During our meeting today, feel free to post questions in the chat and Chris will address those as he can. You can also ask questions at the end as well. And I will now turn the meeting over to Cynthia Wentworth, who is our APR chair and board member, and she will introduce Mr. O'Neill for us.
Well, first of all, I just want to tell everybody who's on, thank you very much. So even if you don't have an interest, if you are here because you have an interest in being well informed about APR, that's important to me and important to the chapter. And I just want to tell you guys, thank you for being here. We are a small but mighty crowd, so that's good. And I want to tell Chris O'Neill, thank you for being with us today. He's a very busy gentleman and wasn't mad at all that we're on Zoom so that he could join us from afar. So thank you for the time. Just to let you know a little bit about Chris, he is an APR, I'm going to call that recent APR. He's currently the Chief of Media Relations at the National Transportation Safety Board. He has more than 30 years of government communication experience earned through the collateral duty that he's done, as well as full-time public affairs assignments with the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Customs, and Border Protection. Chris actually holds 3 degrees, a master's in public relations from Boston University, a bachelor's in communication from Charter Oak State College, and associates in criminal justice from University of Phoenix. He earned his accreditation in public relations in December of 2019. That's a young bud, we call that, young. He is also immediate past president on the board of directors for the National Association of Government Communicators. And he's participating, also a participating organization representative for the Universal Accreditation Board, which hosts the APR and that process nationally for PRSA, but also for others. And he serves on their examination preparedness committee. So he is here to answer the questions that anybody might have about APR. We thought we'd start with just a little bit of background and some information from him, but I feel like this is going to be, a heavily Q&A type of opportunity. So if you do have any questions, please let us know. Chris, thank you again and take it away.
Thanks so much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing today? Gonna get a thumbs up, thumbs down. We caffeinated, well fed, excited to be here. Awesome. So APR, it's one of those things that you keep saying, I'm going to get around to it, and I was going to start with the slide of around to it, but I thought that was just a little too over the top. So I'll ease into that a little bit more. But I really don't want to make this a lecture about the APR. So please engage with me, ask me questions as we move through. If something's not clear, doesn't make sense, need to go a different direction, let me know. I tried to keep this kind of 30,000 foot level because I don't know where you all are in your thought processes about getting your APR, but we can go as deep or as high up as y'all want. And then we already have questions? No, just a little flashing light. All right, so let's get right into it. I think the first thing you think about the APR is, let's be clear about what it is, right? The APR is a demonstration of your mastery of strategic communications. And why does that matter? Because there are a lot of people out there, there are a lot of practitioners out there who are really good tactically. They found their niche within the world of public relations, whether it's media relations, internal comms, community relations, crisis comms, take your pick. They found that niche, but they don't always break beyond that tactical level and get to the level of how do I plan for, how do I integrate, coordinate, and synchronize communications for our agency or for the people I represent. That's what APR is really about, right? It's showing that, it's demonstrating you have mastered those skills on how to integrate, coordinate, and synchronize communications in an organization, that you can think strategically and align communications with that strategic initiative. Secondly, it represents a commitment to lifelong learning. So I have 3 degrees, we talked about that, but when did I earn my master's? Yeah, I earned my master's in 2005. It's been a while, right? If I'm not doing something to help keep my knife sharp, keep my skills sharp, keep that edge that keeps me leading instead of following the field, right? APR shows that I'm committed to that. I couldn't have gotten my APR if I hadn't brushed off the rust, sharpened up some skills, maybe gained a few new ones, or at least thought about things a little differently, right? And most importantly, it talks about your commitment to ethical standards. I've been on the board of directors for NAGC for roughly, I don't know, 11 years, I think, in different positions. But one of the things I love about NAGC is right up there, we smack you right up up front with our code of ethics. And it starts with the premise that the truth is sacred, right? And I love that. And so I love that the APR has such a foundation in ethical communication. And what that means, depending on where you are, whether you're working for government, whether you're in a private sector or not for profit. But at the end of the day, some things are just universal. And this shows your commitment to that ethical standard of communication. All right, so the why earn an APR? That is like so personal. It's so different for so many people. It's kind of hard to distill it down. But let's try to break it down into a couple practical terms, right? Let's take it out of Chris O'Neill's personal space for a second. Let's talk about why is an APR something worth pursuing. All right, so first off, it's good for your employer. Well, Chris, really? How's that work? So one, they get bragging rights. It's nice when you can say someone in your firm is an APR. I'm the first person in the NTSB to have an APR. Yes, I had to educate my chairman. What was it about? And then you're like, wow, so you had to take an exam and you had to do this and you really had to earn it. Yeah, I put some effort into this, boss. It was not easy, right? So they kind of get the bragging right, but really it's more than that. The advantage for your employer is now they have a practitioner who has these skill sets, right? They know that. They may not have known it before. You may have been trudging along doing this all the time, but simply earning your APR helps reinforce the fact that they have that resource in you, that they have that kind of counsel, and that you've met these standards of performance. So it's an advantage for the employer. I am dragging the NTSB into the sphere of strategic communication. We're a super small agency, like 430 employees. You think it'd be really easy to affect change? Nah, there's some really ingrained cultures in this joint. And I'm just kind of dragging them along, kicking and screaming, but at least I'm there moving them forward. When I first got there, they were still asking how many news releases we published a year as a measure of success. If anybody says that to me now, I throw them out of my office. So, you're that resource to help your organization keep moving forward. All right, an advantage for the profession. So we talked about the people who are expert technicians, right? They are that tactical go-to. I need a news release. Chris is going to write that news release. I need a video. I need a tour. I need this. I need that. I need, 5 stories about our commissioner for the internal comms. We got those people who are the go-to people, and we totally need those people, right? But the profession, at the end of the day, I think if I ask the question, I will ask the question, how many of you have encountered the senior leadership who know how to do your job and tell you that on a regular basis, right? It happens to us all, and it happens a lot in government. I don't know, when they get to like the SES level, they suddenly are like, I know everything. When I was active duty military, it's when they put on captain or admiral, a little later for some, earlier for others, right? But at the end of the day, they all say, well, I watch TV, I watch the news, I must know how to do a media interview. I've seen people do bad things in media interviews, I know what not to do. They all think they know how to do their job and they don't know the first thing about it. That's okay, that's why we're here. That's why we provide counsel, we educate, we persuade, and we inform, and we bring our expertise to the battlefield and help them be successful, right? So in the world of a lot of people who are focused on the tactics, there's the need for people to earn their APR to bring the profession as a whole up to that standard, right? The more of us that earn our APRs, the more that the profession is recognized for more than just that tactical, well, you just write news releases and take pictures and write stories. Yeah, no, there's a little more to it than that, boss. Let me help you out here, right? An advantage for yourself. All right, and this is going to vary widely, and I'll tell you later why I got mine after 30 years of experience. But when we poll people who earn their APR and we ask them, what was in it for you? Why did you decide you wanted to do this? 91% of them said it was a source of pride, and I would agree with that. It develops professional skills. I absolutely agree with that. There's nothing like having 30 years of experience and education on your belt and then realizing you don't know everything. It's a great eye-opener for you to make you think differently about things that you thought you knew backwards and forwards. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Some personal benefits, I'll get into that too, my story, but yeah, having an APR can be the door opener for you, particularly if you're job hunting. We'll talk about that. And then helping resolve ethical dilemmas. Yeah, if you hadn't had a really firm foundation in ethics, or you work someplace where they get a little squishy with it, it's nice to have something to go back to and say, no. This is how business is supposed to be done. So says this. And that's why I earned this accreditation, because I want to be that kind of practitioner. All right, if that wasn't enough for you, we'll do a little bit more. All right, so anyone who stops learning is old, whether they stop learning at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. I would hate to be old in my 20s. I'm starting to feel old in my latter 50s here. But at the end of the day, I still want to keep learning. And that's what keeps us young in our profession. I love Einstein. Intellectual growth should commence at birth and cease only at death, right? Earning your APR keeps you in that process. Those people who develop the new ability to continuously acquire new and better forms of knowledge that they can apply, that's the key part, can apply to their work and to their lives, will be the movers and shakers in our society for the indefinite future. If you're not continuously acquiring new skills, you will be left behind in history. As time passes, it becomes even more apparent that knowledge begets knowledge. New competencies drive careers forward. Learnability, that's a new word for me, the desire and capability to develop in-demand skills makes you indispensable. Stole that from the ladders, right? Talking about that job search, your APR, earning that APR shows that you have those new skills and that you're constantly updating your skill set. And look, here's the bottom line. The more you learn, the more you earn. So says Warren Buffett.
And Chris, before we go to your next slide, would you mind I think we have a couple people in the waiting room.
You
We'll
bet.
just let them in real quick. They will want to see Yoda. Or we can toss it back to Christy.
I am looking for the button that says let them in.
Christy, are you able to see the?
Yeah, let me flip back really quick.
One momento.
Someday I'll learn how to use Zoom.
We have to float between like 3 platforms at work. I spend most of my life in Teams, a little bit more in Zoom, and then every once in a while go to webinar. And right when you think you've mastered one of them, you use the next one and realize you forgot everything that you knew about that one.
Well, we may have everyone here then. I thought we had a couple that were running late, but.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. we'll go.
No, not to worry. Hold on. Make sure I haven't missed something here. No. All right. And we look through and see if there's any questions. No, good comments though. Thank you for those. Super. Should we go back to Yoda?
Once again, yes.
All
Yoda,
right.
it is.
I can do this. Two. There we go. All right. We back to Yoda? All right. So getting that round to it thing. This is another way of getting, well, I'll get around to it. No. There is no try. There is only do. Right? Set your mind to earning your APR and do. Right? How to get started. I'm sure most of you know this, but I just wanted to hit some real high points here, and we can go into more questions if you'd like. Great place to start, praccreditation.org. Go from there and you can dive into all of the resources that are available to you, all the how-tos, where-tos, how to get a mentor, all that stuff spawns from that location. Seek coaching support from an accreditation chair. So all the areas have an accreditation chair. Say, hey, I'm interested in pursuing my APR. I'd really like to get a mentor. I highly recommend it. It's super helpful. Complete the panel presentation questionnaire. That sounds like an easy thing. It's like what, 8, 9, 13 questions? Yeah, that's a bugger. That takes some time and effort. You want to set some time aside for that one. Don't think that that's something you're going to do overnight and send it in. Integrate your online and in-print study materials in the APR study guide. The APR study guide is currently under revision. The last issue is from 2018. My team and others are working on updating it. I found it invaluable in prepping for the exam. We'll talk more about that. And when we say integrate your online and print study materials, there are materials that are available to you online. And then if you're old school like me, I really don't like reading a book on my computer screen. I want to have a textbook in my hands. I'm going to get out my several colors of highlighters because each one means a different thing for me. And I'm going to go highlight and do all that, right? So however you best learn, the resources are there for you. Get them all that you can and have them at your ready. So as you're moving through your prep course or as you're just moving through your own studies or getting with your study team, you have all those materials available to you. Local study groups. If you like to study in a group and bounce ideas off each other and ask each other questions and get those responses, and well, I didn't read that. Well, no, you missed it. It's over here on page this. Those can be really valuable, so I encourage it. People, you can break down areas, do outlines. You can kind of share the load a little bit, which is, I think, the real beauty of it. Your panel presentation, we'll talk about that. I have a lovely story about panel presentations. I think you'll get a lot from it, so I'll go into that later. The examination, we finally caught up with the rest of the people in the 21st century, and we are no longer calling it the computer-based exam. I think we firmly established that computers are here to stay, and there's only one way to take the exam, and that's through a computer. So it's no longer the computer-based exam, it's the exam, just in case anybody was wondering. We now also have the capability, you can do those remotely. There's a lot of guidelines for that. I won't get into them all, but if you can't make it to a Prometric testing center or don't want to, given the pandemic, there's an alternative for you to take that exam so you can still press on. You don't have to put things off until we get back to normal, whenever that is. And then you do all that good stuff, and then you get to have this really cool lapel pin, and then you get to put those initials after your name, which is really kind of fun. And when I say those initials, if there's anybody online here who is looking to pursue their APR plus M, I refer to these things interchangeably. There's some more to do on the APR plus M side that goes along with military public affairs doctrine. But at the end of the day, the process is more or less the same. All right, so let's talk about my story, because there is an easy way to do things and there's a hard way to do things. And I seem destined to do everything the hard way. I don't know why. It's, genealogy, it just is. Everything's a little more challenging for yours truly. So I started my my APR journey during the 2019 furlough. So the NTSB was one of the agencies that got furloughed And I had been toying with the idea of earning my APR for maybe a year or two before that. So I think that's a lie to say I started in 19. I probably started in 17 thinking about it. And what I got hung up on the most is that I felt like I had to have this uber successful campaign to use as my case study, right? The thing I'm going to present at the panel presentation, the thing I'm going to talk about in my questionnaire. And I could never find anything I thought was worthy enough, right? It's especially frustrating, I think, in government communications because typically you don't have the money or the resources to do good research, to get focus groups or panels or do that kind of interviews. It gives you that good data and a good qualitative information. So you're always shortchanging something somewhere, right? And so I felt like none of the things that I had put together were good enough. Or we did them, did what research we could do, did the good lit review, did some data crunching, did some analytics, and then found out, really didn't go anywhere. Despite all that hard work and great ideas and good messaging that we thought would resonate, it was just kind of meh. I'm like, well, I don't want to do a meh. What good is that? And, so I was talking to a couple of people who had their APRs, and they're like, dude, you're never going to find that perfect thing, right? That's called the unicorn. They might exist, but they're really, really hard to find. So why don't you think about, part of the presentation is your ability to recognize, here are the gaps in my thing. I know it's not perfect. Here's where I could have set a different objective. Here's where I might have employed a different strategy. Here's where we dropped the ball on the evaluation, right? So long as you're the one pointing out the gaps and then saying, here's what in retrospect I could have done differently, it really doesn't matter. Now, yeah, you don't want to walk in there with something that looks like Swiss cheese, right? Because that's not what you want to do. But at the end of the day, if you're putting off the whole process because you're waiting for that epic communication plan that was flawlessly executed and had superior results, you might be waiting a long time. If you got one of those, man, what are you waiting for? Let's go. But that's what held me up for so long. And when I finally got over myself and got past that, then it kind of started to flow. And then I got it. Right? All right. So I put together my questionnaire. I submitted it to my quasi-mentor. And I say my quasi-mentor because it's a colleague of mine from NAGC who has her APR. We worked together on a couple of different things. And she said, I'd be happy to mentor you through this. So I sent her my panel presentation questionnaire, say, what do you think? She says, okay, I tweaked this, tweaked that, tweaked this, tweaked that, but you are clearly operating at a high level and schedule your presentation. Sweet. So I was trying to replicate the steps of another member of NAGC who, believe it or not, earned her accreditation in 8 weeks, which I find astonishing. And I was like, I could do that. And nope, I couldn't do that. No, couldn't replicate that. Not didn't even come close. But I was charging towards that. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. So I scheduled the panel presentation, and I'm preparing for it. And what I hadn't really done yet was actually talk to anybody about preparing for the panel presentation. I'm like, I got this. I know how to read directions. How hard could this be? That was a fatal flaw in my thought process. I'm going to readily admit that. And so what I failed to recognize is that the panel presentation is more about that panel assessing whether you're really ready to sit for the exam than it is about the thing that you're presenting. So as I'm going through my planning process with them and explaining to them this project and all the things that it did and how we had to change culture in the organization, changed graphics, change and built this campaign. And yeah, it was kind of meh, but it was kind of a mess size audience and it wasn't going to set the world on fire, but it achieved a number of things that we wanted to do. And, at some point I realized that I've been talking to these people for about 2 hours and these things are only supposed to take about an hour. So I really walked out of this thinking I failed. I really thought, well, that sucked. I'll be doing this again. And I got the email or letter a couple days later, said, congratulations. I'm like, wow, how'd that happen? So I reached out to the chair of the panel and she was like, I am so glad you called me. I would really love to talk to you. Because I think, that went a lot harder than it had to be. And I'm like, yeah, I would love to know the secret sauce here. So we met for some coffee. And at the end of the day, what I really failed to recognize is what they said: we knew you know what you're doing. We know you're ready for this exam. What we weren't hearing were the words and phrases expressed in the ways that we would expect to hear them from someone who's getting ready to sit for the exam. So, what does that really mean? So what it means is that, as you're preparing for your APR, you're going to go through those KSAs, right? And those KSAs are how everything's organized. And so they kind of expect in your panel presentation to hear you moving through those KSAs and how your presentation shows that you understand the material they're in and how you applied it and practiced it. Well, I didn't do it. I'm just doing my little RPI thing and moving on through the process. And here's how I did this. So that was like the greatest conversation I could have had. So my point is, get the mentor, have the discussions with your mentor way earlier in the process, and really get into the let's prepare for this presentation and make sure I'm prepared for it. Why is that important? Because I will tell you that shook my confidence. Like, I was ready to leap tall buildings when I went to that panel presentation. When I realized that, I just kind of got through it, I was like, well, I must not be ready for this exam. And it really, it took me several months to get the gumption back up to get in it and get the exam done and pull the trigger and move forward. So don't do that to yourself, is my point. Mine is a cautionary tale. That's what I love about my story. It's a cautionary note. Let's see, I'm looking at the chat here. Do you know the cost of the program? Yeah, so there are the upfront costs, and then there's the hidden, I don't want to say hidden costs, but there's the cost that you might not anticipate. So upfront cost, I think it's $435 still, I think, for the APR. So that gets you in the door, that gets you your application in, gets you into the process. I never want to take an exam that I haven't read all the textbooks for. And I hadn't gone to college since 2005. Textbooks are a little pricey these days. So, if you're going to buy 3, 1, 3, 5 textbooks, you might want to budget for that. And I'll buy a used textbook from time to time, but I kind of want them in a pristine condition. And if it's something I think I'm going to hold on to in my reference library, then I'm looking for that really nice hardcover to leave on a shelf. So budget for that money. And, I think you could, if you want to really build out your library, you could spend another $400 there easily. If you want to do it a little bit cheaper, I think you can get it done for under $2. Right? So there's that. I paid for the APR online study course because by the time I got my confidence back and said I could use a little help and a little focus, and I want to make sure I'm navigating the KSAs properly, I went ahead and signed up for the course, and also well worth it. I think that was $130 something. Well worth the money. Absolutely. So I'm not one to really go to study groups. I really didn't like study groups in college very much. I just like to grind on my own thing. I didn't like group projects all that much. I'll do them, but not how I learn. This, however, you're in that online environment and everybody's got kind of assignments that you bring back to the next online meeting. You get some turns actually writing questions, which really gets you into the meat of the text of the books. It gets you into the issues. It gets you into the items. And people get ready for their panel presentations. They're providing those presentations there, seeking feedback, which is great because you pick up great ideas. And then the other part of it was you've got APRs who are there to facilitate the course. So you've got the people who are doing that course that night. And then you've got APRs in the chat just giving all kinds of feedback and comments and responding to questions. And it's a really great kind of group collaborative session. And it really helps navigate you through the study guide and the KSAs. Well worth the money. So yeah, if you kind of go for broke and swing for the fences, you might be into this for somewhere around $650, $700. Let's talk about that. So what does that mean for you in return on investment, right? There's the personal pride thing, and I don't know, I can't put a price on that because I'm kind of a type A. I applied for a couple jobs recently, Not that I'm displeased with the NTSB, don't go spreading rumors. We're always looking to see what's on the horizon as I get closer to that magic retirement age and looking for places where I want to work and maybe retire too. And these jobs said APR candidates preferred, right? And I actually seeing it in government now. I've applied for 2 jobs in government, in federal government, that wanted APR candidates, which was like previously unheard of. In the Navy, it is now a requirement to obtain your APR plus M, I think, to go from 04 to 05 in the public affairs community, right? And that's going to start building out in the other branches soon. I applied for a job in Tennessee with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and they said APR candidate or APR holder or APR candidate preferred. I had to turn that job down just because salaries couldn't mesh up just the way I wanted, but it was clear that they loved everything about the APR and loved how I applied that knowledge, loved how I applied it over a number of years, how I'm still involved with boards and developing folks, helping people learn the profession. So your return on investment may not be immediate, but it will pay off for you at some point in some way. The small little way for me has been at NTSB. I have never been surrounded by more PhDs and engineers per capita any place else I've worked than at the NTSB. And, and they kind of pat me on my head. Oh, you poor guy with just a master's degree. You can't possibly understand this. What do you mean there's a science to communication? So it's just nice to be able to hang those initials after my word that gives them a moment of pause before they say those things. Now they still say, yeah, you're not a PhD though. Oh yeah, and I have zero desire to become one. I'm a little late in the game for me to do that. But that's what kind of got me on the where and the how and the process. So my cautionary note there.
And Chris, I would like to add too that during the time that we had active APRs in the, qualifying for APR in the process, we did have local groups in addition to the national opportunity. All we're looking for is enough that we can get a group started, to do that. Christy and I have talked about potentially kicking that off, end of summer, first of fall. The other piece is that we have as a chapter shared some of the hard copy assets. So if there are specific books and such, we did find it valuable if we had multiple, people could get what they wanted and read up on what they wanted and then pass those along. As Carol and I decided, that's you got to keep them current. So if there are some that want to do with the current resources that are out there, that's something we could discuss as a chapter as well, so that people aren't out that entire amount.
And I know at the UAB, I think at our last executive meeting, we were talking about, is there an opportunity for us to give at least temporary access to members who are pursuing their APR to items on the bookshelf?
Right.
And that's the other thing that's, I think, in the process of changing or has changed, but you won't see long bookshelf or short bookshelf. You're just going to find bookshelf. And these are references that you would want to know. Good pause, tactical, thank you. I'm going to look at the chat box here and answer some questions before I press on. Can I give you an example of the question from the exam? No, I'm kind of prohibited from that, but what I can do is tell you like how questions are constructed, right? So you will not find a question on the exam that's like the definition of media relations is, right? There's no surface scratching questions on the exam. They're designed to evaluate your mastery of the information. And so much of the questions on the exam are situational based. They pose to you a scenario, and then they give you 4 or 5 options to choose from. And sometimes they'll say, pick 2 of the 5 as the solution to this problem. So it's a lot of problem solving based on your knowledge of the KSAs. It's not rote memorization. It's not, tell us about, this thing on page 245 of this book. It is applying the knowledge that you've gained by studying those materials. And if you think of it that way, that'll help prepare you best. Let's see. Can I speak about KSAs or weighted on the test? Yeah, I don't have it committed to memory. And I want to say it changes from time to time, but when you get the APR study guide, it will have the KSAs listed out for you, and it'll tell you how they're weighted, or how much, and not so much weighted, but how much of the exam is represented by those KSAs. And it will vary from time to time, but yeah, you can get in there and say, all right, you know, I am saturated. Where am I going to focus my efforts? You have to have something in everything for that exam. But yes, you can certainly get to a point where you say, all right, I'm saturated now and I'm going to focus on these areas, or, oh, wait a minute, I wasn't focusing on this and it's a huge part of the test. All right, let me rethink my strategy. Did I have to sell the APR to NTSB leadership, or were they aware of it, and how did I present it to them? So the NTSB didn't pay for my APR. I didn't ask them to. I wanted to do this on my own. Wanted to earn it for myself. And my office director, who's my immediate supervisor's boss, Darlene Hatchett, was aware of the APR, knew what it was about, and was very supportive. And everybody within the communications office is aware of the APR, and everybody was pretty excited that I was going for it. So that was nice. Beyond the Office of Communications, it was a pretty new concept to most everybody in the NTSB. And it was actually kind of nice to introduce them to the concept and bring it around. So it was nice. I think if I was seeking like a tuition assistance thing from NTSB for that, I think I would have approached it kind of like my first slide. Hey, here's the benefit for you, organization, right? Here's what you get by helping me pursue this accreditation. Cost, once you're in your PR, you apply for $100 stipend from the Southwest District. Yeah, there are a lot of reimbursements. I know NAGC, we give we call it blanking on the term. Yeah, we give you money. Scholarship, that's it. Ding, ding, ding. It's that old age setting in. Yeah, we'll give you $100 back for a scholarship. I know a lot of other places do, so that's great. And I know NTSB is a big supporter of their people earning certifications and different accreditations. So I could have gone to them and I probably would have gotten a great deal of financial help. It just wasn't what I wanted to do at the time. APR plus M, yes. Sorry about that. I should have been clearer. Let's see, what point do you what point in one's career do you recommend they pursue an APR? So I want to say, if you go to the website, they're talking about people who have 5 or more years in the career field is kind of like a baseline. I think people know for themselves whether they think they're really ready or not, if they've had enough experience and have worked strategically in public relations, whether they're ready for it. I don't think it's something to tackle straight out of your master's program. While you'll have a lot of knowledge, you may not have all the practical experience and application, may not have had the ethical considerations to confront that'll help inform you and move you through the process. But that's kind of, I think, PRSA's and the UAB's expectation is that, you know, someone's got 5 or 7 years under their belt in the profession, because that should have given them ample opportunity to experience a lot of facets of the profession and acquire some skills and knowledge along the way. So good question there too. Thank you. Mentioned someone getting the APR in 8 weeks. Yeah, what's the average? Yeah, that is like, you know, you always had that outlier on the bell curve, and that is definitely it. I don't know how she did it. That is just like focused. Like, I don't know, she take like 8 weeks vacation.
It's not focused, it's insanity. Don't do it, Susan. That's insanity.
You know, I'm always one up for trying to set the record books, right? You know, type A and everything. And I absolutely do not recommend it. It's just not good. I did mine, I'd say in a year, honestly, right? I put fingers to keypad in January of that year, and December 30th, I sat for the exam. And I felt good. And I think I might have done it sooner had I not done what I did to myself in the panel presentation. I'm telling you, it really rocked my confidence. And I kept putting off getting serious about the study because of it. And I started thinking, maybe I don't know what I know. And in fact, I do. I just needed to express it a different way.
And it might be a good spot to also say that when you start the timer, meaning that you declare that you are going down the path of APR, that it is a year, you have a year.
Right.
And a lot of people, you know, what he's talking about is a lot of people, including me, wanted to go quicker than that. And it makes things a lot more difficult. So you have to do it in under a year because that's what the process requires. Otherwise you have to reapply. But also that I wouldn't try to declare you're going to do it shorter. Just say that you know you have to do it within that year and then just take it as it comes versus trying to beat a clock other than the year that's required.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for me, having that deadline looming is what really helped pull me across the finish line. It's like, I am not going to reapply doing this. This is going to get done. And it really allowed me to focus a little bit more. And, you know, particularly by that time, we were back at work. You know, we were back at work, I think by February, something, beginning of March of that year. And so having that deadline looming really helped me focus and realize, you know, this is like going back to college and, you know, you're going to have to put aside some time every couple of days at night and study. And it's just like going back to school. And that's how I approached it. And that worked for me. I think everybody has a different process. You know how you learn and how you organize your workload and strike that work balance. That's how I achieved that. I just put myself back in the mindset of going back to school. You know, aside from my master's degree, all of my education was at night. I got my first 2 degrees while I was, all of them while I was active duty. But I remember studying accounting on the flight deck of a C-141 on my way to Africa. I mean, you know, I just was squeezing in courses wherever I could. So, you know, I'm the only idiot that took 13 years to get a 4-year degree. But my master's, I got to go to school full time. I was just like shocked. I'm like, wait a minute. So if I get picked up for this program, all my time in service counts towards retirement. It counts towards time and grade. And my job is go get good grades. And I don't have to stay on duty. I don't even have to wear a uniform if I don't want to. How do I get on this deal? Right. So, yeah, going to school full time to get my master's was great. And I look back at it now, I'm like, I don't know if I would have been able to do the night school master's thing. I think I would have fried myself out. So,
I think in just general, they say 8 to 10 months would be average, but I do think,
I think
knowing
so.
that you have a year and then whatever you can complete underneath that, but giving yourself grace because there are things that come up at work. You know, knowing that you have that time, even if you didn't need it, knowing you have it sometimes can help relieve stress.
And even if you sign up for the online course, you know, the online course allows you to kind of poke in and out of the process as you're moving through. So if you don't make each and every session, it's not like you're going to be lost. You miss out on some information clearly, but it's not as rigid as like coursework is. But it guides you, and I found it incredibly helpful. I kind of moved through everything I wanted to talk about the APR. I think we talked about.
You got some new questions too, though.
Awesome.
Yep.
Are there accommodations for those teaching in higher education that may not have had as much of a traditional professional portfolio? That's my hesitation. Let's see. I'm not sure I know how to respond to that. And I don't know that there's a lot of accommodations in the process. I think the key goes back to how I was talking about the presentation, right? So if you're not having that project that you think, you know, hits all the wickets, it's about recognizing that it didn't hit all the wickets and explaining that. Teaching higher ed, so you may not have, you know, I think they would look at it from how many years have you been teaching, or a combination of, you know, if you were in the profession and then went to teach and now want to pursue your APR, what's the combination of those years to get to that kind of baseline? But that might be a question to run past the PRSA. I don't know that I could give you much more than that. Let's see, students quite a bit. Do you recommend that young professionals pursue their masters? Yeah, I wish I had been able to get my master's a little sooner in my career, but I don't think I suffered for it. I think it's important to get a master's if you know where you want to go within the profession, right? Because even within a master's, there are different ways to focus on different concentrations within the profession. So if you have a young student who really knows where they want to go within the profession and are ready to seek a master's with that concentration, then I think it's really useful. But I also think it's useful to go out and get a couple years under your belt and get a master's. I think it's different for everyone. Some people can't stomach the idea of earning a master's at night once they're into their career because they just want to be solely into their career and doing that work. And so getting your master's right after your 4-year makes perfect sense. But if you're willing to either go back to school full time at a later point or do the night school and weekend school thing and earn it that way, I think it's different for everyone. But I think the master's is incredibly important the longer you stay in the profession and the more that you want to advance in the profession. I can't speak to this one. Maybe you can help me out a little bit, Cynthia. Are there panel presentations for Kansas in person, and are they held in Wichita? Just Cynthia looks locked up.
So what I
Kristen?
wrote is that the panels are held in Wichita. It's out in Canada. But those are held locally, and that's based off of how many people at what time will be going through the process. But the people that are on the panel are APRs, and it is done locally.
Awesome.
Cynthia, do you think if we had people from other areas in Kansas, is that the kind of thing we could do via Zoom or another platform?
I will have to check into that. So none that I've participated in have been, but I'm sure that there are some accommodations by this point. I think it's different than the actual testing, right, which has to be under certain eye. So I would think so, but that's a question I couldn't answer right now without talking to National, but I can put that on my list.
Yeah, same here. I want to say I've heard about virtual panel presentations, but I got to confirm that.
Right. I think it's following the policy. And so I just don't know how they've accommodated that.
Any other questions about the APR, the process, the exam, why get one, benefits there too? Stunned silence. I have done my job. It was awesome. No, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. Only been an APR holder for a couple of years is daunting to come and speak about it, but it's fresh in my mind. So I'm happy to speak about it, and I hope you don't replicate my mistakes. Don't make it hard on yourself. You'll get there if you do. I'm evidence. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But at the end of the day, much like my career, there's a much shorter and more linear path between point A and point B. And my job is to help show people that path. So I hope I've given you some insight there. Thanks very much for your time and your attention. That's all I was set out to share today.
Well, I appreciate your time, Chris, to be with us. The one thing I want to share with everybody that's on the call too is that we have additional information. I've created a document that kind of links to all of the national resources for this process that will kind of help. We'll go ahead and send that. I'll work with Christy after we're off here and we'll get that sent to you guys. It is just a good way to kind of click on hyperlinks and learn more about that. But I would tell you that as I'm looking, I think I have at least 3 APRs on the call. And if I can, Carol Scaff, Jamie Reed, and myself are also happy to either individually or jointly answer questions about the process. Everybody has their own story. Mine is don't do it like I did it also. But if you guys have any interest or have some follow-up questions, even with Chris, I'm sure, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm sure you'd be happy to answer some via email after this call. And Kathy Mulvihill, which is at our national PRSA location, is a tremendous, tremendous resource. So plenty of people to answer questions. No questions are silly. I think it's more intimidating just from my own personal experience to not know, but you're afraid to ask questions. At least I was. Now that we're in this position, I just feel like, people were willing. I just didn't ask the questions. So just know that we're willing. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, it's a personal decision. But if it is one that you make, you've got plenty of folks that you can ask questions of.
Absolutely. And I put my contact information in the chat box there. All right. So someone's asking how many people fail, and that's just such the wrong question to ask, right? We're all going, there is no try, there is do. but I want to say pass rates are in the 85 percentile, I think.
All right, here we go. This is full disclosure. I did not pass the first time. And part of the reason that I did not is very similar to what Chris shared. It is very important to understand the KSAs. A lot of what I tried to do was based off of real life. It's not necessarily a real life quiz. It is a test of, from the process perspective, connected with the KSAs. If all was right in the world, how would it go? And once I really kind of wrapped my arms around that piece of it, I would tell you guys that I'm looking at our group that's on here right now. There isn't a single person on here who couldn't do that. But I think, obviously I wish somebody would have shared that before I took the test. It is not a multiple choice. It is not memorize the history. You got to know it, but don't spend time stressing about it. But I think the biggest thing is to both understand the KSAs and their weighting, which is on that study guide. And that link is a part of that document I'll send to you guys. And recognizing how would we actually use that in real life, not how it really happens, because we all know on this call, it doesn't always happen like it's supposed to, and we're great at being able to make changes and to shift. That's really not what this exam is about. It's more about those KSAs, how they're weighted, and then how you would apply that to actual situations. So one thing we didn't talk about on this call, there are boot camps. I would not recommend a boot camp straight out of the gate because there is nothing more stringent of drinking through a fire hose than a boot camp. It literally is, you arrive on Friday, you study your butt off Friday, Saturday, most of Sunday, and Sunday evening you take a test, and it's insanity. It's crazy. However, I will tell you that after not passing the
I hate when that happens.
You lost you, Cynthia.
Yeah, I didn't take the boot camp myself. There's another program called APR Jumpstart. Ann Kanabi is one of the instructors for that. And it's a much shorter and condensed version of, how to get started in your APR journey and to help manage some expectations and give you kind of pathway ahead. So that's helpful as well. But yeah, the boot camp can be a little bit of drinking from the fire hose, but if you're already into the process and looking to make sure that you're on the right track, I think they can be helpful. But right out
definitely
the gate,
wouldn't recommend it coming out of the gate, but if you're in the process and that far in, that could be an option as well.
All right.
Some good feedback there in the chat box too.
Thank you for all that. It was my pleasure to be with you all today, and thanks for your time and attention. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Chris.
One more quick question. Do you know when the new study guide will be released?
I don't know that we have a date set in mind other than sooner rather than later. I think we have an exam and prep committee meeting in another couple of weeks. I'll probably get an update after that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of editing going on as we speak.
And I would say most of those changes are pretty minor. So going in and studying what is current for that is still going to be extremely valuable. So they may make some tweaks, but overall concepts don't necessarily change in those renditions. It's more along the lines of modernizing the information for the chaos of the day.
Yeah, like the computer-based exam opposed to the exam, right? Yeah, there are some references that need a little updating.
And just to make sure everybody saw it, Carol made a point that she did a ton of reading over 9 to 10 months just to be sure she had the language down and the theory down. Again, that's good advice because I did not do that. And the study materials for Jamie, she studied for a year and was in a group that I was in as well with regular study sessions locally in Wichita before she started the time. So a year of studying and then starting the time, and then you have to take the exam 1 year after you start the process. So I think that to be said, those are great success stories. And just to say that, hardly anyone that I know does it the same way, which definitely tells you there's more than one way to get this accomplished.
Okay, and one other question, what is a KSA?
Are you going, Chris?
I'll let you go.
Well, those are, I'm going to get the exact term, but it's basically the knowledge that you are required to know for the actual process. It's the knowledge, skills, and what's the last one? Abilities. KSA is knowledge, skills, and abilities. And it's basically kind of in the things that you would use every day as a PR professional. So research concepts, research applications, planning, programming, diversity, implementation, follow through, evaluation of programs. It's all the different things that in your regular world you would use. But again, like Chris was explaining, you're not always going to have like research concepts, for instance, formal and informal, secondary and primary. It's, what you would do, but your budgets don't necessarily allow you to do all those steps and all those processes. That is what got me hung up the first time. I was real world answering the questions. It's not necessarily real world. It's that if all things were equal and you were able to follow the KSAs, how would that look? So that's knowledge, skills, and abilities, KSAs. And again, that link that we'll be sending, there's all kinds of information to learn more about exactly which ones they are, and then where to find the information in the study guide, because the study guide itself is also a link in that document.
Cynthia, do we as a chapter still do the pinning ceremony at one of our meetings? Because that was a real highlight for me in the course of my career.
I appreciate knowing that. Funny that you should say, absolutely we do. But the reason that we are having this revival right here and invited Chris to start with us and having a real process is because we just haven't had interest in APR in a while. So some of the things that would be considered normal that you guys have probably not seen because we just haven't had some in the last several years. One of which would be kind of a kickoff mixer. Thank you, COVID. And so that's why we were pushing more towards fall or somewhere further down the road where we can do more of an official kickoff. I didn't want to miss the opportunity during APR month in April. So that's why we have Chris today and we're talking about this today. But having a kickoff mixer for APR where others that have earned their APR can kind of mingle with people and literally one-on-one just answer questions they may have is one of the parts of the process. Local study groups, which is something that both Jamie and I went through at the same time with several others who went through the process too. Those were extremely helpful. But again, if we don't have anybody interested, we're currently not holding study sessions, but could and would if we had people that enter the process. And then finally, once that is earned, yes, that becomes an actual part of the pre-programming. So anytime that it's actually earned in that month, we would pin the APR at the chapter meetings, which is very fun.
All right, well, Chris, did you have something? Okay.
Nope, we were just saying any other questions.
Okay. All right, well, Chris, thank you so much. And Cynthia, thank you for your information as well. Carol? Oh, okay.
I'm waving at him.
Okay.
No waving.
All right.
Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Yep. Just one quick announcement before we hop off. Our next meeting is Tuesday, May 25th at noon, and we are going to learn more about Google Analytics. So look for that event information coming out soon. So I hope you all have a great day, and it was good to see everyone, and hope to see you in May.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.